welcome to Indy Eye, Jordan Vandenlam and Roz Ward.
Thanks, Michelle. Thanks for having me.
Hi.
Just a quick intro. Jordan, otherwise known as Purple Pingers, is a lawyer and advocate for renters everywhere, and now running as a Senate candidate with the Victorian Socialist Party in the next election, next federal election. And Roz Ward is the former co-founder of the Safe Schools Coalition and former Victorian Socialist candidate as well in both state and council elections. And now Jordan's campaign manager, correct?
Yep, I just keep coming back. Yep.
Can't get rid of Roz.
No.
That's good to hear, I think. Jordan, I might just start with you first.
Mhm.
A BBC article referred to you as the Robin Hood TikToker with a vigilante approach. Would you say that's a fair assessment?
I wouldn't say that. I think, yeah, like the Robin Hood kind of analogy kind of individualizes, an approach to social justice that I disagree with. Take a collective approach, and try and empower other people rather than just doing it myself because that's not really what I believe in. I don't think we should be waiting for saviors and stuff like that and Robin Hood figures or Luigi figures. I think we are much more powerful together, and that's not only my perspective. That's just a socialist perspective on everything. I guess we can do a lot collectively that we cannot do as individuals.
And you're no good at archery, so
Yeah, and also not the best at archery. So yeah,
That could be
we'll
a
get there one
problem.
day,
That could
maybe.
be a problem.
Yeah.
But I guess the Robin Hood thing is kind of, I mean, I get that because you are sort of highlighting, um, not exactly taking from the rich and giving to the poor, but highlighting certainly properties that are vacant for long periods of time in during a housing crisis
Mm,
and making them available
mm.
for people to house in. So I guess that's kind of a
Yeah,
Robin Hood.
that aspect is kind of like we have certainly taken from the rich and given to the poor, with respect to some of the empty properties that we've quite literally, taken,
Yes.
and they're being occupied by people who were previously without homes. So that's correct. It's just not an individual doing it. It's us together.
Yeah. And did you actually start? I know you started, I think you said you started your moniker of Purple Pingers, which you now regret, um,
Mm,
back in year 10. Is that kind of when you started this whole crusade, for want
no.
of a better word?
Yeah, no, definitely not. Yeah, that was just a gamer tag that I came up with when I was in high school. I do regret it, but not entirely.
No.
I still think it's got some legs. It's a bit funny.
catchy, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, I think,
Unique.
yeah, the flip side of it is probably that it has given you possibly more attention in a way. Whereas if you just called yourself Jordan, the renters advocate, it's a bit boring.
Yeah. Unfortunately, yeah, it probably has. I do get a lot of comments from mainly boomers being like, "You're aware that's a drug reference, aren't you?" Yes, I'm familiar with my name. I know
Thank you.
what it means.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Thanks for letting
Well,
me know
good to
though.
know. Good to know.
Yeah.
So, so what was your motivation behind it all? How did it start?
I think at the beginning I was just motivated by anger, really. Um, it all kind of started during COVID. And yeah, I was working in I'm a public servant and I was working in child sex abuse at the time, and had a lot of time at home on my own thinking about stuff, and that's not a particularly healthy thing to be doing when you work in that environment. So I wanted to
Yeah.
take out some of that, I guess, anger or upsettingness that I felt. And yeah, I decided that the next closest thing to child sex abusers was real estate agents, and I stand by that to this day. Don't know if you can hear that though.
Yeah, I think we can. Um, so-
Excellent.
I'm cool with it. Okay, and it's now expanded, like, as I understand it. Maybe just run us through, either of you, how it all works. So you kind of you have this list called, um, oh, I forgot what it's called. It's called shit renters or something.
Shit
Shit
rentals. Yeah, yeah,
rentals,
Shit
that's
yeah.
the
rentals.
one.
And you list all the houses that are available or the problems that people have with houses that they are already renting, that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
word of mouth.
Yeah, so it's pretty much like imagine like a Google review, except instead of a business, it's for a rental property or a real estate agency. So yeah, it's literally just a review site, except it's free, and landlords can't pay to take it down. They're like real estate agents pay, rate my agent, to just remove reviews, and things like that, or issue defamation, concerns notices, and things like that to individuals who do it. So this way, by doing it on shitrentals.org, it's a way to for people to share their stories, and collectively protect each other from some of the horrifying stuff that we see in the rental market, and also some of the really dodgy practices, done by real estate agencies. And yeah, they can't as easily harass tenants to take down their reviews. They have to go through me quite literally to get it removed from the website.
And I mean, I've heard that there are similar groups, Facebook groups and things between landlords actually sharing information on how to get out of fixing things and,
Mm,
you
How to
know,
kick tenants out, yeah.
mhm,
yeah,
How to claim on your bond, how to make tenants pay their bond to you, all that stuff,
mm.
yeah.
exactly.
Disgusting.
I guess well, I think it's fair game, and I'm assuming you obviously think it's fair game to do the same
Yeah,
on your.
absolutely. Like, yeah, if you look at the resources available to landlords and real estate agents, they've got um, rental blacklists. They've got their own kind of word of mouth reviews that they provide to other real estate agents and landlords. They have massive databases of your information that they then sell to advertisers and stuff like that. And they have all of your, you know, identifying documents, and they get regular data breaches all the time. This doesn't go any like full stretch in terms of turning the tables, but it does at least provide an opposing force to the like immense power that's held by these evil people.
Yeah. And I think, you know, you've talked before about that power imbalance. And I think,
Mm,
Roz, you've obviously had experience with that as well, in terms of the Safe Schools Coalition. And so this is one way, I guess, that people can be empowered, as you say, that it's not really a vigilante thing at all. It's really about giving people some tools or some um, access, if you
mm,
like, to information, which is
mm,
often hard
Mm.
to get. So,
And I think it's also just about not feeling like you're the only one. Like it's your
mm,
fault somehow that you ended up in some shithole
mm,
rental place, or that you should have done something about it and you don't know what to do. Maybe you're an idiot or whatever. And actually, you look at this site and you think, no, it's not me. It's not my fault.
mm,
It's actually the responsibility of the landlords and the real estate agents for putting us in this position. And, doing things collectively was the whole point of safe schools as well, to make young people feel like they're not the only one getting bullied for being gay at school. Like
mm,
there are literally hundreds or if not thousands of young people having that same experience, and we shouldn't be having it. Like,
mm.
and we shouldn't be renting shitholes with mold growing up the walls and children who need to sleep with a humidifier on all the time, and
Mm.
like cracks that you can see the light coming through under your doors and windows when it's 42 degrees yesterday and there's no way to cool your house down. Like,
Exactly.
And
We
this
all know, but we should be telling each other all the time that it's not our fault. We don't deserve to have that
Mm,
kind of crap.
No,
yeah.
and conversely, I think, like I know that you've referred to yourself this way, Jordan, as well, but I do feel that I'm privileged because, I have a home
Mm,
and I've always had a home, although, I also lived in a shit rental, but
mm,
that's another story. And also my mother and I actually lived in a housing commission house, which was
mm.
available to us. So we were lucky in that regard.
Yeah, back
But,
when you could do
so
that.
they're not available now, are they? Or not very
No.
many anyway.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that I think has changed a lot since I was a child.
Mm.
Um, since we were all children, I think. I'm not sure if we still had housing commission when you were younger, Jordan, but
It definitely
um,
existed, but definitely, yeah, definitely more than it does now. That's for
yeah,
sure.
absolutely. And I think, I guess this comes to the heart of what you're trying to fight for, I think. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but, this idea that I think both sides of government haven't really addressed the housing issue
No.
properly. I know there have been some steps, with the Labor government and in Victoria in particular. I think there was talk anyway. There
Mm.
was certainly a policy announcement about homes being built
Mm-hmm.
over a certain period of time, 30 years or something.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think either side has addressed it fully
Mm-mm.
in terms of what's happening to homeless people right now, for example.
Mm.
Um, and and that's only growing, and nobody seems, I mean, they seem more concerned about moving them out of key areas, like the
Mm.
Melbourne City Council, for example. I've got stories about that one, which we have published, by the way, so it's not,
Mm.
I'm not telling tales of people being moved on, of their possessions being taken,
Mm.
bylaws being passed to make so many things illegal, to make it impossible for them to even live on the street. So where are these
Mm.
people meant to go?
Mm.
That's the question. And
Literally.
yeah, and is that, I guess, I know, well, why don't I let you tell us, both of
Mm.
you, how you think that can be addressed?
Yeah. Well, like the thing is, we've done it before. Like if we just take COVID for an example, um, we housed everyone in Melbourne,
Yep.
like in Victoria. Like homelessness is a policy choice, and at the moment, the government's response to homelessness is not to house people; it's to criminalise not having a home, which is a wild thing to do, considering that if we go back to Menzies with the Liberal Prime Minister, even he was like, oh, maybe if we just, you know, build some houses for people to live in, we can solve some of these issues that we're having. That's from a Liberal government.
Mm.
And now, like, we've got Labor governments criminalising, evicting, taking possession, stealing the items, the personal items, of which, people without homes have very few. But even then, let's, just take them, confiscate them. And that's the response. That's what we're getting. Let's sell off our public housing. Let's sell that land to private developers so that they can, we can subsidize their profits through taxpayers' money and stuff like that. And no government, state, territory, federal, local council level has a solution to this that they're putting on the table. All of their solutions are, uh, you know, we need to, at least they acknowledge that we do need to build more homes, but the way that they propose that is, yeah, we'll build a couple, 10, 20, 30 years from now. Not enough by our own measures. And the way that we'll do so is not by actually building those homes, but we'll pay private developers to do that for us so
Yeah.
that they can continue to profit from the housing crisis that we're experiencing, and that so our house prices can continue to grow and expand at unsustainable levels that we're experiencing. Even the current housing minister, recently said on Triple J, I don't want house prices to go down. They need to keep going up. And the cause of our housing crisis is because housing is unaffordable. House prices continuing to grow and go up does not resolve a housing crisis whatsoever.
Mm.
So yeah, and that's what's on offer. And then, the liberals are like, all right, you will get the taxpayer to subsidize your boss's lunch. That's our solution to the housing crisis. Or you can dip into your super if you've got any, which will, their own modeling and the Deloitte modeling for
Don't
that
even
showed that
start on that one. That one's a real,
bloody insane. Like this will
you're
just
right there.
increase the cost of housing as well. So like, yeah, these are the solutions offered by the major parties that we've got.
Mm.
They're all equally useless. But the reasons for that are because they are of the ruling class. They're home owning class, they're investment property owning classes, and they have a personal interest in making sure that this crisis gets worse because they will profit more.
I think it all begins really with the criminal negligence of public housing. And we've seen that. I mean, we can speak about Victoria, and obviously Jordan's the candidate for Victoria, that like in the past few decades, basically it's been a policy of all governments to just ignore public housing, let it rot, let the damage bit build up, let people live in absolute like horrendous shitholes, and then
Mm,
say, "Oh, look, it's all too run down to fix. We can't fix it. We can't
Mm.
afford to build more ourselves. Let's hand this over to the private sector so that our mates can make heaps of profit out of it, and then we'll move people out of the city because we want nice middle class people
mm,
living around the inner suburbs, and then, fuck everybody else off to wherever." And that the knock-on effect of that is when you can't get people into public housing, you can't have any social affordable housing above that, then rents are really high because there's such a pressure on that market, and then house prices are really high. Like you've really ruined the whole system. The rot starts there, I think, and it's been absolutely known amongst all politicians. And I've been campaigning with the Victorian Socialist since 2018, and you can tell when you talk to someone like a Labour housing minister that they know exactly what the problems are. They just have no intention of fixing them, and it just is enraging to see
mm,
that happening.
There is a thing though, I mean, I guess you could say that yes, lots of the parliamentarians themselves have portfolios, or they have at least more than one house. I mean, not all of them, so I'm not generalising, but certainly a lot of them.
mm,
And however, would it be fair to say that that is an aspiration of a lot of middle Australians as well? That I think they've grown up with this idea that A, yes, housing is a right, but
mm,
B, the way to make money, if you like, or the way to progress is by investing in property. So this idea of sharing housing or not aspiring to owning more than one home, I think might be kind of unpopular
mm.
generally among Australian society. Would you say that that's reasonable?
Absolutely. That's a cultural issue that we have in this
Mm.
country that dates back to colonization. If you look to the type of person that colonized the country, when convicts were released, they were given land grants to land that was not theirs. And at the time, those people, where they came from, if you look to, Ireland and the UK, 80%, 90% of the land was owned by the ruling class. They would have never owned land in the UK, but here they come to someone else's country,
Mm.
given land, and then we just culturally have ascribed the continuing process of I need more and more land. That's now our migrant story in this country. It's if you look at, the popularization of land and home ownership through the media through the various decades. Even the castle, that's not even about investment properties and stuff, but that's just the popularization of I have a right to this land, and
Mm.
I'm going to generate my wealth by owning more and more of this land. And in order to do that, I'm going to exploit someone else's labor for me to grow wealthier. And that's how investment properties work. You exploit the product of a renter's labor in the form of rent, and that funds your retirement. and that funds, your wealth generation, I guess. But that's inherently unethical. Like exploiting other people's labor for your personal profit, we don't have to do that. We can just not do that. We can build a better society where we're not exploiting people.
And how
But I
do we
think
do that?
there's also a structural problem. So yeah, there's that cultural stuff. I think it's not unreasonable for people to want a secure place to live, and owning your own home seems like much better than paying somebody else's mortgage.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm
But
not sure we can blame it all on the castle. Sorry.
but the
No, not at
but
all.
the structural stuff, it's set up in the tax system to mean
Mm.
that it's kind of stupid not to try to get an investment property because you get negative gearing, you get all
Hmm.
the capital gains tax breaks.
Yeah.
Um, and it's set up to incentivize people to become small landlords, to have at
Mm,
least one other house. That's the best way to invest your money, which is completely ridiculous. We've made
Mm.
property into basically just an investment commodity, and it's divorced from people's right to have like a secure place to live. Like your right to have a
Exactly.
home, the right for your children to live somewhere securely is
Mm.
secondary to the bricks and mortar and however many square meters of land you have
Mm.
being your investment to make money. Like it's completely wrong. It's very extreme in Australia compared to um, like European countries, for example, but it's
yeah.
it's baked into the tax system, and that's something you could change really quickly and really
Hmm.
easily to just stop that cycle and to make
Mm.
people think, okay, I'm not going to get an investment property. That's not going to make me a little bit better off. I'm going to do something else.
Exactly. If you've got to spare like enough money for a house deposit and you own your own house in this country, you are stupid if you don't, go purchase an investment property. If the only thing that you're thinking about is increasing your wealth at the end of the day. And that's because that's an intentional policy choice by successive governments for a very long time. And we just don't have to do that. Like there's nothing wrong with owning the place that you live in. But there is something wrong with hoarding something that we've commodified that is a human right and that our tax policy and our various other policies prioritize over someone's access to a human right. We prioritize some rich person's wealth generation over the right to a safe and secure home.
And so okay, let's move then to, because you're both obviously members of Victorian Socialists, and assuming they have a platform on this, I know they do, but I just want you to tell us what it is and how you would see that implemented if you were elected, Jordan.
Yeah. Oh, there's heaps of things we could do. Like immediately abolish negative gearing and the capital gains tax exemption for investment properties. Like that's a no-brainer that addresses not only the subsidization of this like cancerous mindset of just hoarding more and more properties, but it also will address some of the cultural approaches to home ownership. Because even if, it's a exorbitant amount of money that we spend subsidizing this stuff, but it will stop a mindset of like, oh, this is what I have to do if I've got spare money is buy a house, because it makes it a bit more accessible, at least in the mind, and as well as, financially. So that immediately quite simple. We could establish like a national bank like we used to have that offers like gets rid of the profit motive for interest rates and stuff, that just offers very low interest rate uh, home loans to people who need to buy a house that they live in at a percentage that's accessible to people. We could also establish a public developer that builds homes. Um, we could do, I don't even know where to go from here. There's so many things. Like we could, yeah, like
Well,
build public housing. Like
1
Yeah.
million public housing units would be a start.
Mm,
yeah, like just like enough public housing, not just for the people who desperately need it, but for everyone. If everyone wants to access accessible and abundant and safe and secure public housing, they should be able to access it.
mm.
Should be able to live in housing that doesn't cost them their entire paycheck every week and every month. They should just be able to live in a house that is not a commodity. And we can do that. That's possible so many other countries do it. We almost did it not that long ago. So
Yeah, well,
yeah.
I mean, there are, I totally understand where you're coming from, and I agree. However, I think, for example, the more progressive, if you like, of the two, because they are more progressive, let's face it, than the Liberal Party at the moment is the Labor Party. And the
Barely.
union movement, of course, was part of that for a very long time. And I mean, last time around, not this election, last election, but the one before, that was largely lost on this whole idea of franking credits, let alone
Mm,
getting rid of, negative gearing. And
mm,
then you've got this, you also have a policy, I believe, which is to do with repossessing properties that have been
mm,
vacant for a long period of time. I'm not suggesting that those policies aren't very progressive and really, great ideas, but
mm,
how would you be able to get those through when we couldn't even get franking credits through last time around? And how many people, I know we don't know who's going to be elected this time, but assuming that we have more independence, that there's
mm,
less support possibly for both the major parties, and we have socialists elected to parliament as well,
mm.
would you realistically be able to get enough support, to be able to pass those kinds of policies? Do you think
Yeah.
Australians are afraid of socialism in general?
I think Australians love socialism, just not when we call it socialism.
Yeah,
Like, find me someone who doesn't love a bulk billed GP if they can access one.
yeah,
Um, like that's just not that's yeah, we just don't like calling it socialism. But
yeah.
like in
Because
if
we've
we
still
get
got
a
reds under the bed happening, haven't we?
yeah, exactly. We're still scared of
Yeah.
this little symbol over here. Um, but if we, yeah, if there's a minority government, and the crossbench kind of holds the power, we could absolutely do some of that. But the thing about socialist politics is it's not inherently electoral. It's about, getting change for working people outside the halls of power.
Yeah.
So if we take, for example, the repossessing of vacant homes. If the government doesn't want to pass that legislation, we can do that ourselves if we want. And we can force change by doing collective action like rent strikes, and mortgage strikes and things like that. There are other ways to get change that don't rely solely on electoralism, because positive change for working people is not made in the halls of power. They have no interest in doing that. So they're probably not going to unless we threaten them.
Or nudge them
And I think, well,
gently.
we've got to start putting some more pressure on, to be honest. Like I think it's obviously going to be hard work, and
Mm,
we're not going to have a socialist majority in Canberra anytime soon. But like the more pressure that we can put on, the better. And I think a lot of places where we'd expect that pressure to come from have not been doing as well as they could have. You know, the Greens took things to the brink and then backed down, on some of their housing policies. The union movement could be doing a lot more. The CFMEU, and it's got its own struggle on its hands, but like get back on your feet and start fighting around some of these issues that we only want to build good quality
mm,
public housing, and we want to see, they could put a lot of pressure on to have a national public developer. Like
mm,
there's lots of muscle out there that's not been flexed for a long time, and we need to start working it out. We need to start somewhere, and I think even just increasing the numbers of people who vote for a socialist, increasing the visibility of a candidate like Jordan, of reaching people and saying, okay, you may not realize that these are socialist ideas, but things like universal free healthcare, things like never having to pay a cent for your child to go to a public school, things like being able to pay your rent because the rent is freeze for 5 years.
Oh, you're
Like
so radical, Roz.
yeah, I know these are not very radical at all, are they? But they're
but
something
yeah,
that we're nowhere near having, and we're not getting. Labour have had enough bloody opportunities, and they've failed. I just think they're finished as a progressive force in
mm,
Australian politics, and I
That's
think we
sad.
need people who will stand up and fight and not back down. And I think that's actually socialists who call themselves socialists are the people to do that.
exactly, and aren't ashamed to do that, like Labor is. Yeah, Like, I don't know. It's just embarrassing at the moment. We had one union that publicly opposed Labor's housing policy and advocated for, public housing, um, and that union's now in administration because Labor didn't like the way that they did that.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, but I mean,
we're not even talking about climate change anymore. Like,
Yeah,
what the
but
hell is going on in the world?
mm,
We've got Trump, we've got neo-Nazis feeling safe to parade themselves around, and everyone's like, "Oh yeah, we don't have to talk about climate change now because
mm,
we're just going to drill and forget about it." It's like,
I
wait a
know.
second, what is
mm,
happening? We need
Well,
people with a voice on the other side of the spectrum.
we do. And I think, if you look at Trump at the moment, that can go one of two ways, I guess, here. People will either follow suit and become more conservative, or they'll
mm,
completely reject the whole concept. So, I mean, obviously, we're hoping for the latter, but time will tell, and
yeah.
it is scary times. But anyway, I mean, I wish you both really well, and I hope you do get elected, Jordan. And I want to see lots of public housing, and certainly even in the short term, I think what you were talking about, this idea that we can do a lot more besides electoral change, which is
Mm,
to do with people power and getting
hmm
people motivated to stand up and speak out,
mm,
rent strikes and things like that. I think the fact that your website has become so popular, and that you've even got, I believe, people now telling you, giving you information about UK and the US and
mm.
Switzerland. Is that right?
Yeah, we've got a couple in Switzerland.
It's just extraordinary. So well done on that. Certainly suggests there's an appetite for it,
Mm,
among Australians, and possibly more younger Australians who are actually facing these issues. Whereas I think older people like myself,
mm,
we've already had our free education, thank you very much, and our ability to, to own our own home
mm,
reasonably, you know,
mm,
without having to sell ourselves in other ways. So I think, those things are reasonable, and
mm.
we should all be able to have
Yeah.
access to them. So yeah, more power to
And
you.
And you know what? If people want to get involved in Jordan's campaign, like just look up Pingers for Parliament. But it's going to go beyond the election. So an election will happen this year. What will happen, and we'll
Mm,
do as well as we possibly can, and we'll fight hard to win as many votes as we can. But there'll be other things happening beyond that, and n neither of us are going to stop advocating and being
100%.
active and trying to get more people involved. So if you're watching this and thinking, yeah, I don't know about elections, like
Mm,
that's not
Yeah,
just what we're about, obviously. We don't think that's going to be, happening
mm,
overnight. But yeah, do get involved because there's plenty of other things that we've got
hmm
happening and up our sleeves and some stuff that we're not going to talk about yet. So
okay, love it, love it. And just a general personal question now to each of you. Do you have a mantra or a philosophy that you live by?
Absolutely, yeah. From each according to their ability to each according to their needs is mine, as well as bread and roses. Those are my mantras.
Love it. And Roz?
classic, yeah. Um, I think uh, um I used to present a podcast called Red Flag Radio, which is still on, by the way, with other great hosts. And we used to end every episode by saying we have a world to win. But there's a part that comes before that, which is we have nothing to lose but our chains, which I just think it's pretty grandiose, but
No, I love
it
it.
literally is now the world.
Mm,
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I really love it. So thank you both so much for joining me today, and all the best in your campaign to get elected, and for positive change as well.
thanks,
Thanks,
Michelle.
Michelle.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Cheers. See ya.